Paul Kagame. Partly, I think some of us also feel responsible that we are partly to blame from that, because he was like the brand, and we are selling this brand to the international community, that President Kagame is the guy for the country, he's a man of the time, and that
he wants to educate people. He's getting health care for everyone.
Yes. And so when they say Rwandan people, in Rwanda there isn't much corruption, it's partly true. It's not the ordinary folks who are corrupt, ministers and people in business and so on and so forth. The corruption that is so immense and so pervasive is actually Kagame's corruption, because it's him who has access to all these resources for both his personal use and for simply attempting to destroy the opposition.
What is a good case scenario for Rwanda? Because it doesn't seem like Kagame's going away anytime soon. He just won re-election. Nobody's especially worried about this. The UN report seems to blow over and not worry people too much. Where do you go next?
Where we go from here, I think, depends on what the Rwandan people are able to do. And I think the myth that Kagame has built over the years is beginning to collapse. If you look at what happened last year, 2010, at the beginning of the year, he was like a star. If he came to the United States or went through London, he met the who is who in these establishments and was being held by universities, by people in the Christian order, and saying that he's the best guy for the country. And the media was also falling into that trap too. By the end of the year, if you Googled President Kagame today, not surprisingly, you'd figure out that he's no longer riding on that wave as was riding at the beginning of the year, which means that increasingly the world is becoming aware of who Kagame is. But the most important thing is that the Rwandans actually know who Kagame is. And yes, there is pervasive fear in the country. Yes, there is almost absolute silence in the country, because in Rwanda there is no other media other than the government media. There's no civil society and independent voices that you can hear. There are no political groups that can have alternative views. So there's pervasive fear and there is silence. Rwanda is a country that is always tempting to a dictator, because it is small, and anybody who rules Rwanda, whether it was ancient kings or the people who have run Rwanda after independence, it has always tempted them, because once you're in charge, you feel like you are in absolute charge, that you have absolute control of this tiny country, and it's now 11 million people. But I think there are two scenarios. The worst case scenario is if Rwandans do not resist this absolute dictatorship, and if the international community continues to keep silent about what is going in Rwanda, as people say in English, that sure as night follows day, Rwanda is going to slide into another civil war and into more bloodshed. But our view is that that is not inevitable. That need not happen, because we know what needs to be done in order to prevent that. The best case scenario is where we are able to get both the change within Rwanda in a peaceful way. And there are a few things which do not need money to do. If, for example, we say, Kagame, you must stop killing Rwandan people, that we do not need money from donors. We don't need money from America or money from London to stop killing Rwandan people. If we want to do that, we simply do it immediately, and no more Rwandans are killed. Sometimes when I'm meeting people from my ethnic group, the Tutsis, family members, and they say, you become betrayers, you betrayed the Tutsi cause. That's what they say. I say, number one, yes, I might be Tutsi, but I'm also a human being, and I'm a Rwandan. And I tell them that for somebody who in the past, the killings were mainly directed against the Hutus. And I tell them, well, even if you thought that killing Hutus is okay, what about when Kagame has started killing and harassing Tutsis? Do you think that is also right? So I think now Kagame has focused his eyes on both Hutus and Tutsis. As long as you're not on the same page on the way the country is being run, you necessarily become his enemy. And the gut instinct of President Kagame, every time he thinks about anybody who does not think and act like him, his gut instinct is to kill. And so we are saying that, number one, let human rights abuses stop, and they stop immediately. And that is something that Rwandans must stay and say clearly and say loudly, And it's something that the international community, particularly Washington and London, need to understand. That's number one. Human rights abuses must stop. Number two, Rwandans must have the courage to be at the same table. Like you and me are now having this conversation. What would prevent Rwandan people to be on a table to have dialogue about our past, our present, and about where we need to go? Unfortunately, Kagame says everything that Rwandans aspired for, we've achieved. We've achieved unity. We've achieved reconciliation. So why should I talk to the opposition? But I think for a deeply divided society, a society that has gone through conflict and still goes through conflict, a society that has gone through genocide, a society that still has people struggling against it militarily in the forests of Congo, you need to have a large heart to say, let's sit at the table, let's talk about our problems, let's find solutions together. And thirdly, I think we need to insist on having a democratic process. The desire to have an open democratic process in which there is checks and balances within our society, within which we have the rule of institutions rather than the rule of one man, where you have independent media, where the judiciary works, where there is the rule of law. Those are the kind of things that we need to be having. And I think that's the path to peace in Rwanda, but it will have to be peace with change within Rwanda.
I imagine you knew Paul Kagame for a long time. You joined up with him. You're a physician who left your calling, I imagine, to join the RPF and in exile and fight to get a new Rwanda. What changed about the movement, about Kagame?
Actually, that's a very deep question. I guess we may not even be able to settle it in this short conversation, because I've also been thinking about it, and I've had time to reflect really on the condition of human beings in Rwanda and on the condition of humans in general, and I've been asking myself, what would lead a man who originally would be a subscriber to this noble intention for transforming society, who changes course and then decides to run the country to a different and very, very dangerous path? I do not know what is going on in Kagame's mind, but one thing that I'm sure about is that I've come to confirm that indeed power corrupts and absolute power corrupts, as it has always been said. Because once you have an organization that does not have the spirit and culture of internal democracy, of collective decision-making, of figuring out how to experiment on the kind of things that you are preaching, then you cannot really nurture it outside the organization. And so the death of the founding ideas of RPF first died within the organization itself. They died within the RPF. And the more President Kagame amassed power in his own hands, the more the organization died. And the more the organization died, the more this whole idea about transforming Rwandan society died with it. So it's a very deep question, but how that could happen, I think it also goes down to the nature of human beings.
Theogene Rudasingwa is former RPF member, former General Secretary, former Chief of Staff for Paul Kagame. Thanks a lot for joining us, and also Brian Endless from Loyola University and a Senior Advisor to the Hotel Rwanda Foundation. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you, Drew.
Thank you.